What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Back Your Play with Q. I'm your host, as always, Rich Quinones. As always, check out the YouTube channel, subscribe, like, comment, share at Rich Q on Q, social media, the like at Rich Q on Q, IG, Twitter, right across the board. And our Wednesday edition BYP from our very good friends over at Played Again Sports. They buy new and used sports equipment. They pay very good cash for it as well. Open 7 days a week, 1450 Clements Bridge Road in Deptford, New Jersey. All right. So we thought there was going to be a little bit of a lull when it came to the NFL news, but it's always picking up. Our guy, our NFL Insider Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join me on a Wednesday edition of BYP. Lloyd, how are you?
Doing great, Q. Like we always say, NFL never sleeps, and just so much going on around the league.
Yeah, and the Rodgers news, and it does look like that trade is imminent to the New York Jets. The Jets made a minor move today. Moore gets shipped out to Cleveland, and that's most likely because the Jets already brought in another wide receiver in Hardman. So Moore gets traded to the Browns. You just wonder, okay, is this going to be one of these picks that they package with Green Bay? Let's start there for a moment, because I'm wondering, can you foresee a scenario where there's such a sticking point here that because of Rodgers' comments that he said on McAfee's show, where he basically called out the franchise and the way of doing business, can you see a scenario where now Green Bay decides, hey, we've got all the leverage. Now we want 2 number 1 draft picks, first-round draft picks from the Jets, right? It's almost as though, okay, because you've ran your mouth, now we've got a little more leverage, and now all of a sudden we want more back on a return on investment. Or do you believe no matter what, when the smoke and dust settles and clears, Rodgers will be traded to the Jets and there won't be any hangups?
It was going to be interesting because we know that this deal's done, as you said, and the Packers are not taking back Aaron Rodgers. So I almost think that the Jets have more leverage here because he showed his hand. He said he wants to go to the Jets, and it's just a matter of getting this done. And I think the move that we saw today with Elijah Moore going to the Browns, they're trying to clear some cap space. I think Corey Davis, a veteran receiver who's with the Jets, and they're probably going to move on from him. They'll probably get rid of him to free up some money. But the big sticking point with Aaron Rodgers is that $60 million cap hit that's coming the Jets' way. And yeah, they got to work out compensation. But if I'm the Jets, I don't give 2 number 1s for a 39-year-old quarterback who's kind of declining, in my opinion. So it's going to be interesting to see how this thing works out. But, you'd rather see it done sooner rather than later. The draft's going to be here in about a month, and then you have OTAs, and you want everybody on the same page. And, Aaron Rodgers is it'd be best for him to keep his mouth shut, and for Joe Douglas and Mark Murphy and Brian Gutekunst, who's the general manager for the Packers, to get this deal done.
With this pending move, we'll say, because it's technically not official yet, is this more, in your opinion, is this more in line with this? We're just over Aaron Rodgers. We want to get rid of him. We don't want to deal with the drama, the hang up. We know he's lost a little bit on the fastball, and it's time for the kid. Or we have to get rid of him because we know what we have in this kid and we're ready for him. Like which side of the fence you're on with
that's a good question. And I think the big thing, Q, is I think the Packers are ready to move on from him. They have Jordan Love in the cupboard. They drafted him in the first round. They really don't know what they have in him, and we've seen him play a little bit, some good, some bad. But I just think they're tired of Aaron Rodgers' act of holding him hostage each off season and kind of, am I going to play? Am I not going to play? And then we've talked to a lot of people around the NFL, and a lot of them are all saying the same thing, that he's just not beloved in the locker room. And now his guys, Mercedes Lewis, I don't think he signed with the Jets yet, but you've seen Alan Lazard go to the Jets. Rumors of Cobb going there as well. So all his guys are going to the Jets, or rumored to go there. So, the landing strip is all set for him to go to New York, but let's get this thing done, and the league year started last week, and it was fast and furious. And you and I were talking about all the dominoes falling, and Rodgers still sitting out there, him and Lamar Jackson.
Eli came in when the Giants were winning with Warner. and they were 5-4. Romo came in to replace Bledsoe against the Giants through pick six. Rodgers came in late November, many moons ago, against the Dallas Cowboys to supplant Favre at that moment. And now you've got Jordan Love. I mean, what are the expectations, right? When you really think about this, like what potentially would be the expectations going into the season with Jordan Love? And now you've stripped them of one wide receiver in Lazard. If it's me, I'm hammering the under for the win total for the Green Bay Packers, because I just don't think they're going to be a very good team. They'll win some games, but I can't see them winning 8, 9, 10 games with Jordan Love.
Yeah, and we know they were pretty close to making the playoffs this year, but the other team in that division are getting better, particularly the Detroit Lions, who beat them the last week of the season in Green Bay, which was a total surprise, and their team that's not backing down for them. They're loading up in free agency. They have draft picks from the Stafford trade. So they're a team that's gotten better. The Bears have been very active, we know, in free agency as well, trying to rebuild that roster. Ryan Poles, their general manager there. So yeah, I would tend to agree with you, Q, that the Packers are they're a team coming back to the group. So it's going to be interesting to see Ken Love, a guy who really didn't play that much in college, can he really step it up, and is he the player they thought when they reached for him in the first round so many years ago?
Yeah, you mentioned that NFC North with the Lions, and let's talk about the Vikings for a moment, because now there's a dark horse team in the potential Lamar Jackson sweepstakes, and that is the Minnesota Vikings. There were a couple of little nuggets over the last 24 to 48 hours where a couple of reporters maybe speculating, insinuating, maybe just their opinion that, hey, Minnesota might be a player for Lamar Jackson, which means they'd have to jettison off Captain Kirk Cousins to make a move for Lamar. So twofold question. Will Lamar be under center for the Baltimore Ravens next year? And the second part of that, if he's not under center, is it because he's sitting out, or because eventually their hand was forced to the point where get rid of him, trade him, and here you go. This is what we're going to offer you, Lamar Jackson. We're going to give you that guaranteed money, and we'll give up, I should say sign them, because not trade, but sign them because of the way they tagged them. We'll give you the guaranteed money, and we'll also give up 2 first-round draft picks. What scenario is more likely?
Yeah, I would tend to think, Hugh, that he's going to end up back in Baltimore or on Baltimore's roster. I'll say that. Eric DeCosta is the general manager there, and Steve Bisciotti, the owner. They seem to, they still value Lamar in terms of he's a valuable piece that they can move around the chessboard. So if he doesn't want to play for the team, fine, let him sit out. They've tagged him. Obviously, they tagged him as non-exclusive, so he can go out and find another deal. But the deals just are not coming forward. And of course, everybody's going to kind of blame Lamar. And that's what I'm hearing out here, that Lamar, since he doesn't have an agent, he doesn't have that mouthpiece to go around the league and shop his services. It's just kind of a detriment. So it's Lamar, it's his mother, and there's some unnamed family advisor, who is not licensed by the NFLPA. So, it's a very cloudy situation. I think in the end, that he just does not have a lot of leverage, and they're going to keep his rights. So I think Lamar eventually will end up with the team. Maybe it's a situation like we've seen like a couple years ago, Emmitt Smith way back in the day, where he missed a couple weeks of the regular season and he came in. But I don't foresee him in other teams' uniform unless, another team. I don't know, I'm just throwing teams out here. Like the Colts. Maybe the Colts would say, you know what? Why not bring him in rather than go with a young quarterback? But right now, I would just think he's going to be with the Ravens.
Is it possible that now other reports are coming out where he's not, quote, hell-bent on receiving a fully guaranteed contract? So by that coming out, he still wants a multi-year deal, and he still wants a lucrative contract. So I'm going to assume it's still going to be in the neighborhood of $200 million. But again, because, to reiterate to the viewing audience, because the Ravens slapped them with the non-exclusive franchise tag, they can match any offer and will receive 2 first-round draft picks if they decide not to match any signs with said team, whether it's Washington, the Colts, Minnesota, who knows? I'm starting to think, to your point, because he doesn't really have legit reps, so to speak, right, an agent, that now all of a sudden he's kind of walking back some of his his comments regarding a fully guaranteed contract. And he's not going to get Deshaun Watson 330. We know that. So maybe there's a little wiggle room. I just think the fact that the player and the franchise have not been able to come to terms in what now, 2 seasons, 2 years, to me, it spells the end of this marriage.
Yeah, and it may not be immediate this season, but definitely as you move towards, I know they picked up his 5th-year option and they've franchised him, but as you move to that 5-6 year mark with a team and he has not gotten over the hump. Yes, he had that MVP season and he's won a playoff game, but it's just not what they want when they see other young quarterbacks, particularly Patrick Mahomes, a guy who came in the league right around the same time as Lamar. He's been to 3 Super Bowls, winning 2, and they're starting to wonder, is he the guy? And Harbaugh's kind of on a hot seat. He's been there for a while. Yes, he won a Super Bowl, but that's kind of way back in the rearview mirror. So, change could be coming in Baltimore, but I just don't know if it's right now. Lamar, as you said, he's kind of backed off some of his big talk in terms of fully guaranteed contracts. I think in the end, he will try to get that Kyler Murray type deal, that Daniel Jones type deal, $40 million plus. And also some guarantees and some signing bonus. But we're gonna have to wait and see. I think it's going to be who blinks first. And I think in the end, they're going to just say, Lamar, okay, it's OTA time. We have your rights.
Yeah.
You either sign the contract and play on the franchise tag for about 28 to $32 million, or you sit it out. So, this is far from over here.
Yeah, about 32 million and some change. Lloyd Vance joined us Wednesday edition of BYP with Q. Rich Quinones here from our good friends over at Played Against Sports. Part of me, maybe his mom's contacting teams. We just don't know. But this is kind of the difference between really having an agent do all the work for you, right? Because they're working when it says on the clock and incentives. All right, so you got a couple of reports that a Canadian billionaire now is eyeing up the Washington Commanders. Man, I'll tell you, I don't know how this is going to play out, but I find it interesting that they're so in flux. Snyder's going to be pressured. He could make money, obviously, off this sale. They just hired Bieniemy. You got Rivera, who really hasn't done much over the last several years. And oh, by the way, I mean, do they really have a legit quarterback, or are we talking about a bridge quarterback right now on their roster? I believe it's in Jacoby Brissett. I mean, where are you at right now with Washington? Do you believe that eventually Snyder, and remember, technically it's his wife, Tanya, right? They announced back in November their intentions to sell. Forbes lists the value of the franchise right around 5.6. So do you think they'll sell? And then talent on the field. I mean, does this team have enough talent to even compete in the NFC East?
They can. I mean, they can still compete, but they're clearly, I would say, number 4 in this division, and this is that ambiguity that we've talked about with this franchise for so many years, and the cloud of Daniel Snyder. And particularly, I heard that recently he did move out of the facilities, and so that was a big move, that he's not there for the day to day, and definitely the for sale sign is out front. So. I don't think it's going to be Bezos or anybody like that. Maybe this Canadian guy that you're talking about. Somebody's going to buy this franchise, and I think it will be before the beginning of next season. And they want that. They want that cloud lifted from this franchise. I think some of the other more established owners are just tired of his act, and they kind of want to move on. So, in terms of the roster, kind of depleted. They have Sam Howell there, a young quarterback that they drafted from North Carolina, and they're bringing in some other free agents. And there are some pieces there. So they brought Payne back on a franchise tag. Defensively, you wonder if Young is able to ever come back from that ACL injury that was so devastating to his career. He was kind of the linchpin for that defense. Chase Young coming over his rookie season was just phenomenal, but just not the same guy ever since. I don't think he really even played last season, maybe like 1 or 2 games at the end of the year. So, we'll see how that plays out. But I think if you had to handicap it right now, you'd still say Eagles, Dallas, New York, and then Washington.
The Eagles, pardon me, when you look at their secondary, I mean, again, I just think it's a question of where if you're Gardner Johnson, you're going to get some money. Why not sign the contract with Detroit? However, it played out right. Steelers signed Sayamalo, so you lose a guard there. They finally bring in Mariota, right? They ain't him to a one-year deal, 8 years too late. And they wound up getting the extension for Slay after all these speculations, or he's cut, he's released, and then boom, what happens? They turn around, they give him a $42 million extension. Sanders signs with Carolina for $25 million. So listen, these are familiar faces aside from bringing in the Mariota that I just mentioned and losing some big time pieces in Hargrave as well. I still believe the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be the class of the NFC East and maybe the NFC, but you still got to take care of that quarterback eventually. So when do you think a deal gets done for Jalen Hurts, and what do you think that contract looks like or would look like?
Sure. Q, yeah. So there's always that window. I think it's around November, and we've seen the Eagles use this before, where you can sign, players on a roster to these very long extensions, and it kind of moves the money forward to the next season. So I would think that's the area that's in play here, out until November extension, and then it could be in camp as well. I've seen the Eagles do that before too. With guys like Westbrook, they want to get it done in camp before the season starts. So those are two areas I would look at for this deal to get done. You've seen them lose some of the players you're talking about on defense that they thought cost too much money, and then bringing in some value guys like a couple of linebackers that they're bringing in, and they brought in the safety from New Orleans. And, these guys aren't frontline guys. We'll see how they kind of fit into the mix. But I think the Eagles and Howie Roseman, their general manager, knew that they were going to lose some people and that they were going to have to play around with this roster. And it just was not going to be the same snapshot that we saw of the team as they left Arizona when they lost to Kansas City. So, I think still a very good group. As you're saying, they brought back both their corners, which is a good win for them in terms of their coverage. But losing their two coordinators is going to be very interesting to see how both those units kind of play out, and particularly Shane Steichen leaving the offense, and can now Sirianni be the guy that's the play caller per se, and how's that all going to work out offensively. So I think they bring back Jalen Hurts and give him his extension. I think it definitely will be that $40 million to $45 million per season. And then he's going to get some kind of a signing bonus, $60 million plus. But it's definitely going to be that long-term, you're the cornerstone franchise quarterback, and we're going to build around you.
You got notable free agents still out there: Bobby Wagner, Odell Beckham Jr., I think the guard Risner, Clowney. Before I let you get out of here, Beckham, right? I mean, you can make the case that right away, instantly healthy, upgrades any wide receiver room in the NFL. There was a lot of buzz he was going to be ready to play late last season. I never believed it for one moment. I'm not going to say, he's pricing himself out, because he was potentially asking for $20 million, which was ridiculous. He walked it back once again. I don't know what you're looking at right now as far as what he has left in the tank. He's 30 years old. Can he upgrade? Can he help a wide receiver corp? Absolutely, he can. I don't know. I'm not saying there's not a market, but it's just interesting. I'm wondering if teams are still worried about his health, or maybe they're still worried about, just a personality, behavior. Everyone says he's mature now. He's got a kid. That's all well and good. But when the ball's not coming your way, are you going to get the 24-year-old Beckham, right? The 23-year-old Beckham.
Yeah. And Q, as these guys become veterans, I mean, we followed Odell's entire career. So, at one point he was the hot guy in the National Football League. Everybody was talking about him, had all the commercials, and he had the big contract and everything. But he leaves New York, and then everything changes from there once he goes to Cleveland. So, right now in free agency, the league year started. We talked about that. There's a lot of value contracts going now. You see guys signing 1-year deals. That's what Hardman just signed with the New York Jets. They're looking for a home now, and it's not going to be that home run payday in terms that most of these guys that were Pro Bowl players at one time
Right.
won. So Odell can either do one or two things. He can sign a value deal with a team like maybe the Steelers because they need somebody to help Pickens and Johnson out now, or another team. But he's not getting. I'm hearing he's asking for $16 million, and I just don't see anybody giving him that this stage in his career. Yes, he's going to have to probably sign a prove it deal with a lot incentive laced. Maybe tied to team performance where he can get his numbers up with the team makes the playoffs and he maybe gets 10 touchdowns or more. But right now, he's coming into a team as a second receiver. He's not looked as a number one anymore around him. So we're going to have to see how this plays out, but health is definitely a key. That knee injury was very bad, and then it happened at a bad time in the season. He got hurt in the Super Bowl and just never really came back from that.
2 for 24, right? I mean, I go 12. I can't go 16, and there's no way I go 20. But like you said, back end incentive lace, the health concerns me, man, because he's really dealt with some bad injuries over the last several years. I mean, ever since he got hurt late with the Giants, I think it was that game when he went across the middle against San Diego, then San Diego, the Chargers, got nicked up with the Browns. You mentioned all of a sudden, boom, in the Super Bowl, could have arguably been the MVP. That's just, I don't know, man. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us Wednesday edition of BYP at Lloyd Vance, NFL writer, researcher, historian, PFWA award winner, ESPN NFL Network contributor. All right, so next week, we promise, because I'm getting people hit me up on Twitter, we will definitely get into the offseason of the NFC East. We can't control the fact that the news cycle in the NFL does not sleep. It's constant, as you always say. It never sleeps.
Yeah, and it's exciting. The Carolina making moves, trading up for that first pick. You're going to see a lot of movement. A lot of these teams are armed with a lot of these picks because these trades. For a while around the NFL, everybody was like, I'll trade away my future. That was the Rams model, and now teams are saying, you know what, maybe I should use these picks and just get some good young players coming to the door. So lots to talk about. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, no doubt. And remember, too, the Rams, right, sold their soul for that one season. They got away. They won a Super Bowl, even though they weren't the best team in the NFL, let alone the NFC. You could argue it was Tampa Bay, and then look what happens last year with them. So, all right, my friend, we will definitely, unless watch Lamar Jackson sign, something happens next week. But we'll pencil in you as always. Lloyd's kind enough to join us on a Wednesday edition of BYP from our good friends over at Played Against Sports. Give them a follow, as I mentioned, on social media, at Twitter, at Lloyd Vance. All right, brother. Appreciate you. We'll talk next week.
All right, Q. Thanks for having me on.